Jeez. Oh, man.
Oh, hey there. I bought a rare Japanese sports sedan from the same place that'll deliver you a 2017 Nissan Altima to your door. Carvana. Here, come check it out. I'll show you. It's a little cramped in there. So it's a Lexus. It's got a V8 motor, and it's even got an F badge. And it is, of course, a 2012 Lexus ISF, and back in the day, this was one of my absolute dream cars. I loved these things. But the sad thing about these cars is they're no longer in production. Lexus doesn't make any new F cars. The last one rolled off of the production line this year in 2026. And that's a bit of a shame because this car is pretty special. See, the Germans had motorsport heritage. They had the M cars, they had the AMG cars, heck, even Audi had RS cars. But Lexus didn't have anything like that. They were a relatively new brand in the 2000s. And back then really was the peak of automotive madness in the 2000s. I mean, these compact sedans like this had V8s, you had an M5 with a V10, and then you had an S-Class Mercedes with a V12. Really the name of the game back then was just shove the biggest engine possible in whatever you had and call it a day. And of course, you can't forget the supercars of the day. You had the Ford GT, the Carrera GT, the Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren, all of these crazy cars, and Lexus really didn't have anything to offer. They made a nice, luxurious, comfortable sedan that was bulletproof reliable, but they just didn't have anything that was fun and exciting. So Lexus needed something to vitalize the brand. And that's when they got to work on the LFA, on their halo car, their absolutely top of the line aspirational car. But Lexus also needed something that was a little bit more attainable, that regular people could afford, and that was going to be the ISF. So the goal with the ISF was to take their already kind of sporty IS sedan and just soup it up and make it hotter. What they wanted to do was shove a big V8 engine in there and make it a competitor to the M3. Now, the cool thing about the ISF is it was developed in this sort of skunkworks after hours fashion, which I think is just such a cool idea. So the upper management really didn't have any idea that the engineering team was working on this car. So what they did was they took an off-the-shelf V8 out of their LS sedan, they bored it out, souped it up, made it more performance, upped the displacement to 5 liters, and that was their performance engine all of a sudden. They didn't have to develop an entire new engine for this car. And of course, it's a Lexus. It was gonna have to be reliable, but it was still gonna have to make a lot of power. And of course, they didn't just shove the engine in here and call it a day. They worked the suspension to give it better dynamics. They massaged the bodywork to make it more wide and more aggressive looking. The result of all of that was a genuinely good looking car that, at least on paper, could compete with what was coming out of Germany. And you see, that brings us to the problem of this car. Back in the day, this thing was heavily criticized for just being not as good as an M3 or a C63 AMG. Critics of the time say that it sat somewhere in between. It wasn't as aggressive as an AMG, but it wasn't as finely tuned as an M3 was. And even though Lexus put their best into this car, they really didn't put their best into marketing this thing and getting people to actually understand what it is. Nobody really wanted a fast Lexus. Nobody was really asking for that. So really nobody ended up knowing what these were, and really nobody bought these things. This engine does sound absolutely incredible. Oh yeah. That rev limiter is just such a joy. This V8 was tuned by Yamaha, so it sounds absolutely incredible. There's actually a flap in the intake that opens up at 3,800 RPMs and starts sending in induction noise into the cabin. And it's just nerdy stuff like that that makes you excited about this car. And really what Lexus was going for wasn't necessarily to have the most high performance car. They wanted to build a performance car, but they wanted to capture the emotion of driving with this thing. They wanted it to sound as good as it drove. And they really were successful in that regard with this car, because even though maybe it wasn't the sharpest, it still sounded absolutely incredible, and it puts a smile on your face every time you downshift in this thing. And you really do get the sense that this car was made for car enthusiasts. And it's a shame that these didn't sell more. So in the first year, they sold over 2,000 ISFs. But in the years after, sales just declined, and they really only sold a few hundred a year from then on out. And for this 2012, they only sold a little over 500 for that year. And it is a shame, because this is a really cool car that I think a lot of people would love. I mean, a reliable car with a V8 like this, that's a performance car that competed with with the M3 of the time. I think that's a really cool recipe for a car. But production ended in 2014, and they only sold 84 of these cars. So 2014 is by far the most rare and expensive iteration of this car. And there really was never a true successor to the ISF either. You had the RCF in 2015, and then you had the GSF in 2016, but they really never made a true successor to the ISF. The closest thing that they did was the IS 500, which was essentially an ISF, but they didn't quite give it their all like they did with this car. They didn't have the suspension, the brakes, all the little details. They gave you the big engine, they gave you the same 8-speed transmission pretty much, but they didn't give you all of the little track focus things like they did in the ISF. And even though the ISF was competitive with the cars of the day, the C63, the M3, that was the last time that any of these F cars was really competitive with anything out of Germany, because Lexus, in typical Toyota fashion, they just kind of let this platform sit. They just never really did anything to it. In 2015, they upped the horsepower to around 470 in the RCF. They may have updated the transmission a little bit, but that's it. Just small incremental update like that in 2015. And then from there on, it just kind of sat until 2026, when there is no F car that you can really buy new anymore, except for maybe the RCFs and the IS 500s that are sitting on the lot. But even the LC 500 is going to go out of production as well. So this is a car that was never really long for this world. I mean, it was sort of created at the end of that era where you were just shoving crazy engines in anything that you could. For that, I really love this car. I think it's great. I think it's a product of a bygone era, and it was sort of at the end of that time when you could get big engines in cars. Now everything is 6 cylinders and increasingly 4 cylinders, hybridized, electric, all of that. So this is a really unique car, and it feels like a special car. The years that you want to get are basically anything after 2010 or 2011. 2010, they put a limited slip diff in the rear of here. In 2008 and 2009, they had an open diff in this thing. And in 2011, they did a light facelift, which is what you see on this car with the nice LED headlights. And that was sort of the first hint at the modern Lexus design language. And I think that the 2011 and up look really, really good. They also changed the wheels and just slight interior tweaks, but a lot of people just go for the 2008s. They're going to be the cheapest. And you see a lot of 2008s that are clapped out of these things, trust me. And I think that 2012 is a good year to have, because you get kind of the best of both worlds. You don't have the crazy prices like the 2013 and 14s, but you also have like the best version of this car. The suspension feels really good. That was a complaint back in the 08 and 09 and the earlier ones. The suspension was just not dialed in. It was a little bit too harsh. But all of the big things stayed the same throughout production of the ISF. The engine was the same, transmission was the same. So over my ownership experience of this car over the past 2 years, it's really just been gas, tires, and oil. I mean, there's a reason why these cars are known for being such reliable, dependable cars, because they are. These are aging cars. If you have a 2008 one, it is about 16, 17 years old right now. So that is an old car at this point, and there's a lot of plastic under that hood. So when you go to fix this thing, expect to fix broken clips and plastic pieces like that. But overall, I have had such a good experience owning this car. It has been one of my favorite cars that I have ever owned. It does everything really, really well. It's got 4 seats. You can carry actual humans in the back. It's got a usable trunk. It's got a decent amount of space for a rear-wheel drive car. You got this big tunnel running to the back right here. But overall, it's just a really usable and surprisingly comfortable daily driver. You're not going to get great gas mileage. Maintenance is going to be more expensive on this car. Tires, all that stuff. It's a Lexus. It's a luxury car. It's going to be more expensive. So the biggest criticism of this car has always been the transmission. It's a torque converted 8-speed, and I really like it, but you have to be wringing this car out to get the most out of this transmission. It just doesn't want to shift that fast if you're below like 4,000 or 5,000 RPM. Really, you get the most performance out of the top end of this car. And also, with that being said, the way that this car is tuned, you really have to be up in the rev range to get the most out of this car. Down where I'm at right now, just cruising around town like this, it's kind of this doughy Lexus. You know, it rides pretty good. The transmission shifts fine. It can be a little jerky sometimes, but it's smooth and it's a luxury car. But when you get up in the higher rev ranges, that's when that's when the performance of this car starts to come alive. I do understand the criticism of the 8-speed. I get it. It is kind of sluggish sometimes, but that's kind of the compromise. You want something that's reliable and performance oriented, this is what you get. And you know, a few years ago when I bought this car, prices were pretty crazy on these things. I mean, prices are a little bit crazy now on these things. Like I said, this is a 17-year-old car if you get an 08. So to be asking over $20,000 for that is pretty insane, especially one with over 100,000 miles. Just the prices on this are a little bit insane in my opinion. So if you want to get into an ISF, I would say buy one that's got some miles on it so that you don't feel bad driving it around, because you're really going to want to drive this car. If you buy one of these with 50,000 miles and you pay over $40,000 for it, you're not going to get your money back out of that. You know, you're going to lose a lot of money. But if you get one that's well used and you get it for a good price, you can own this car for a few years and you can still get your money back at the time of going to sell this thing. I've taken this car on road trips too. It's awesome. It just eats up the miles. It rides really, really well for being a performance car like this. And it just does everything really well. I really don't want to sell this thing anytime soon because it's just such a good car. I would love to keep this thing as my daily for years and years to come, as long as you do basic maintenance. Another nice thing about this being a silver Lexus is nobody notices you in this thing. Nobody expects this thing to be able to do what it does because it's just a silver Lexus sedan. I mean, who's going to call the police on you? Yeah, excuse me, there's a silver Lexus speeding down the highway. And the cop's like, okay, which one out of the million that are on the road right now? So you're just invisible in this thing, which is really good. You don't have to worry about like Mustangs and Scat Packs trying to race you and stuff. Really, the people I've seen that react to this car are people that own other Lexuses. Those are the people that know what this is. Everybody else just doesn't have any idea what this car is or what it can do. So that's a good thing in my opinion. Even though the Lexus F cars are pretty much dead at this point, I think they're worth taking a look at nowadays, especially if you can get a good deal on them. That's probably the biggest downside of this car is it is a very dated interior. And honestly, it feels pretty cheap in here. It feels like a Toyota Camry of the time. So that's one of the biggest downsides, but nobody buys this thing because of its interior. People buy this thing because of what it can do and the fact that it's a relatively raw performance car by modern standards now.